ready for a change?
I am talking to you.
Then get ready to explore the quantum possibilities. It's time to transform that outdated paradigm into something universal and new. Time to uncover the truth hidden beneath the veil of lies. A time to think outside the box as we link to a higher consciousness. Welcome to the awakening. And now the hosts of Broadcast Team Alpha, Nori Love and Augie Nost.
Well, hello, beautiful beings. I'm so happy to be here tonight, and here we are again, and I can't deny it, cutting edge conversation while exploring the quantum possibilities. And let me just give you a hint. Do you remember Rosie from the Jetsons? Number 6, Robbie the Robot, Awesome O, Optimus Prime, the Transformers, Robot B9, Hal, the Terminator. What do all of these have to do with our conversation tonight? Oh, we have some interesting information in store for you. And, you know, I was going to include in this very abbreviated list Siri and Alexa, because I wasn't really sure if they're considered, AI. And our guest, who is a phenomenal expert, is going to talk to us about that. So, Augie, will you please tell us about our guest?
Oh, yes. This is going to be good because we have Dan returning to Broadcast Team Alpha. And Dan is a friend of mine. He lives in Tucson also, and he is a media specialist and a teacher of media and computers at Arizona State University. Now, by education, he is a mechanical engineer, and he worked on nuclear technology for the military in the past. Now, for the last many years, he has also done a lot of research on what is outside of the box. He has spoken at conferences and, of course, at our monthly meeting in Tucson, where we get together once a month to talk about strange stuff. And tonight, we will wander way outside of the box again and talk about androids, artificial people. Do we all remember Data on Star Trek? Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's him. And where is artificial intelligence taking us? Or will they do away with us? Now, will robots take all the jobs away from us? Or will there be an android housemaid in every home soon? In Phoenix, Arizona, there is a McDonald's fast food restaurant, and there's only one guy sitting in there because everything else is automated by robots. And they make the food, they deliver it, they hand it to you. It's all done by robots. And boy, oh boy, that's scary. I went to Walmart today, and half the checkouts are automatic. What will happen to us when we one day wake up and say that, gosh, most of the jobs now is run by robots, and what are they going to need us for if we are not needed to do the work? Boy, oh boy, Dan, this gets deep. Welcome to the show, Dan.
Welcome, Dan.
Thank you both so much.
Yay.
Thank you. I am very happy to be here, Nori and Augie.
Aw, thank you. So can we just start out with Alexa and Siri as a segue in before we go in?
Absolutely.
Okay.
The presence of Alexa, Google Assistant, Cortana, which is the Windows variant, Siri by Apple, Alexa by Amazon. What those represent, they're not a technology at the location that you have it. When you go and purchase one of those boxes, Alexa or Cortana or even Siri on a phone, you're only getting a minimal amount of capability in the actual box itself. Most of that comes from the data connection. And the AI that interprets the language that you're speaking, what's going on in the room, and then developing a decision about what to do from that information that it analyzes, is all done remotely. It all goes to servers, and they have these huge data centers that Apple, Google, Windows, Facebook, all of those, Amazon, of course, all of those companies have all over the world, and they are growing tremendously. There are an enormous number of data centers where this information is going to and being processed. And I just feel like the challenge that we face is that sort of invasion of our space where something is listening to us all of the time, and our conversations, all of the things that we're saying and everything that is going on audio wise in our space is being transmitted externally. And of course that could include video as well. I think that is definitely the next phase, is to have some sort of optical or image recognition that's going to go along with this, so that you can do something in front of a camera and the system will generate a response.
So that would be like something pleasing to us, right? Like we think that it's something that's going to benefit us, like many of us think that Alexa and Siri, are innocent benefactors in our life, right? So
exactly, it's a manipulation at some level, or at least we have to look at it from the terms of our perception, what we perceive, and we perceive something as being helpful to us. I say, play a particular piece of music, and then Alexa will go off, bring up that music, and then play it for me. And we see that as an enormous convenience. And then the other things that it can do represent conveniences to us. But the backside of this is everything is being recorded at some level and being interpreted by these systems outboard. So it does represent an immediate and direct invasion of our privacy for the sake of our convenience. And this is one of the important questions for us to ask in the place that AI is being allowed to take in our society, is how much convenience are we willing to accept that AI brings us, and at the same time understanding that convenience brings with it and a reduction in our privacy and a reduction in the security of our space in many ways.
Exactly. And I'm a big boundaries person. My sister would go, "Oh yeah, go in my closet and get this," and I'm like, "No, I won't go in your closet."
Yeah.
So the thought of Alexa or Siri, and my blood ran the other way, because I was talking about an orange leather purse. And I was talking to my friends about it. And all of a sudden on my computer here shows up all of these places to find an orange leather purse. And I did not find that convenient. I mean, I have friends who love it. They just love it. But I find it an invasion to my privacy. I'm not comfortable with that.
It is, and this is very true, it seems, with telephones. And my experience has pointed primarily to the Android platform on telephones as somewhere in one of the applications that we install on an Android phone, there's a user agreement where we just click and agree to it without reading it. Buried within that is the conditions that allow them to collect information via the microphone on the phone in order to analyze it, to theoretically promote things to us. I've had phone conversations with people about a particular subject. Now, I'm talking about a regular phone conversation. I'm not talking about using Skype or something like that, where we kind of have an understanding that someone is probably interpreting what we're saying behind the scenes. But this was a phone conversation through the cell phone carrier, and the next day my friend said, "Hey, you know what? We were talking about this particular place. I got up this morning and I had advertisements for that place on my phone.
Absolutely.
And
And
I can't tell you how many times I've heard that from different people, including one gentleman that talked about having a discussion about a specific illness that he was discussing with somebody, and the next day he was receiving information about that specific illness and how to treat it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the information goes to satellites. Is that true? Because actually, I was on a call today. Actually, I wasn't on a call. I meant to have my earbuds in that were connected to my laptop, and I actually had my phone earbuds in. And while I was doing a live video on the laptop, I heard audio coming from my phone. So this conjures up images to me of people sitting in a big call center, monitoring my phone calls or whatever it is. But all of that information actually goes to satellites. Is that what happens?
Well, actually, what happens is that a lot of it goes to data centers. These data centers where they have the actual computing hardware and the data connections that allow them to analyze the information. Satellites don't necessarily have the bandwidth to handle all of this, and we have the entire country of the United States has been wired with optical cables. Back a number of years ago, if you saw these large orange conduits, tubes, look like giant coils that were going into the ground all over the country, those were optical cables. The entire country is wired for optics, and they have optical cables that have been laid across the ocean. There was an optical cable I was reading about recently that was owned by Facebook and Windows that ran from Spain to Virginia Beach that had been laid. And so what's happening is they're increasing the bandwidth that is possible through these optical cables to communicate, because the amount of data that you can send over optics versus copper is tremendous. Yeah. So satellites represent a little bit higher end of the communication possibilities, and has become somewhat more I don't really have the knowledge about that to speak about it specifically, but so much of what we deal with involves optical communication.
There's even worse. When you talked about the telephones, there's even a worse concept to that, and that is a technology that is called hot on the hook, which means that you can turn the telephone off and they can still listen. Yes. Because there's a technology in there remotely, they can turn the listening part of your telephone on, and they can record everything, even though your phone is off.
Yes. In fact, I had a conversation about that with a gentleman who specialized in modems. And years ago, 20 years ago, that idea was very prevalent, because basically it was the difference between a 2-wire and a 3-wire system to your phone. If you have a 3-wire, this is old technology now, everyone has cell phones. But if you have a conventional landline to your house and there are 3 wires connecting to your phone, those 3 wires then give them the ability to have another path that they can get information from by simply listening in. With the phone down, with the receiver actually down. The pattern that he described to me was you'd get a phone call, it would ring, you'd pick it up, you'd go, hello, no one there, and you'd hang it up, and at that point they were able to capture the connection and be able to listen in to the phone conversation. Or listen to the room, basically, through the phone. That was 20-something years ago.
Yeah.
Now, I will tell you something that I did experience. This was 10 years ago. I went to a conference on consciousness here in Tucson, put on by the Consciousness Center at the U of A, which is internationally renowned for its presentation and yearly conferences that they put on across the globe on the subject of consciousness. There was a gentleman there who came from an East Coast university who was doing a presentation. He got a little off topic, and he began talking about some of the projects that he had done as a psychologist at a major East Coast university. One of the projects he mentioned was a software project. He was mentioning this in 2010, so this has been 10 years ago, that in 2010 he was describing a project that he had gotten through a contract, and I don't know if this was through a government, he didn't specify, or a private contract with a company, but they developed software 10 years ago that you could record the sound in a room where there's 100 people having conversations. And this software would allow them to zoom in on a single conversation, one person talking out of 100 people in the recording. That was 10 years ago.
Yes.
So, you translate that now 10 years worth of evolution of software technology and our understanding of acoustics, and then we get to the point where we have Alexa, Siri, Cortana, Google Assistant out there. We have with the amount of processing power they're bringing to bear on these connections, the ability to discern almost anything acoustically that's going on in the space.
Man, oh man!
So
where is this going, Dan?
Well, I want to bring this around to the concept of consciousness and we talk about artificial intelligence, but first we need to begin to ask some questions about what's going on here. And the first thing to ask, I think, and this is a common question, hopefully for everybody, is who are we? What are we? And it's become the general understanding that we're a spiritual being having a physical experience. That underneath, this physical body is like a soul container, but underneath the soul, the higher self, the spiritual being that is at the core of what we are, is the real entity that we are. And it is who we really are. And we're having this physical experience and going through the process of learning what it is to be a human and having those human experiences, which is raising the consciousness of these higher selves, of the spiritual side. One of the topics that I've gotten into from a science standpoint is the notion of if you've ever heard of it, it's the concept of entropy. And entropy is basically in the physical universe, it's the concept of disorder. So we go from a lower state of entropy to a higher state of entropy, and that seems to be the direction that things are going. That we naturally go from a state of low entropy to higher entropy. So entropy is actually increasing in a irreversible way through the second laws of thermodynamics. But and this could be thought of really as a model, a way to think about this. On the spiritual side, on the non-physical side, we seem to be increasing the order of the universe. We are going from a lower consciousness to higher consciousness. And this, in some ways, some folks are working on the theories that are putting together the physics and the science to prove this. But the entropy of consciousness in the non-physical universe is actually decreasing. So when we're having these spiritual experiences on this planet, we're actually at some level raising the consciousness of the universe and therefore decreasing its entropy. So in one level, the physical entropy is going to a maximum as the universe gets older, but the spiritual entropy is decreasing. So they're reaching a higher point of order.
That's interesting because there's so many people who are focused right now on raising their spirituality and raising their vibration in order to increase coherence and I would have to say non-entropy spiritually.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right? So,
yes.
No, go ahead, please.
No, I was just going to say yes. That's very much the case, and we're kind of on the edge of understanding this. And I present this idea of entropy of consciousness in the non-physical as really a model, a way to understand it. The actual physics of it, I don't have a handle on, and I don't even know if it actually exists. But from a conceptual standpoint, we're decreasing entropy with an increasing spiritual consciousness. So when we answer those questions first and we ask ourselves, well, who and what we are, we're a spiritual being. Well, we can then begin to look at artificial intelligence in terms of what it means for our spiritual evolution. And artificial intelligence currently today, I think, in my opinion, is here to teach us lessons, to bring information to us and to elicit the kind of responses that we need to engage in that are going to raise our consciousness. So artificial intelligence is really here so we can get it right, so we can increase our spiritual consciousness.
Well, that's hopeful.
It is.
We have, I think, about 4 minutes before we go to a break. So we have
Sure.
a quick question from Brian on Twitter, and he said, "Wasn't there a report that even your smart TV or your video games are listening? I mean, with some video games, hackers can access your camera. You always cover your camera up when not in use while they're in your home."
Yes, those are very good, things to be considerate of in terms of managing technology in your life, because we are at this point where the rate of change is so high that the capability to hack into, in a sense, our environment with technology is quite high. The idea of smart TVs, I'm really, sort of against that idea. My idea would be to immediately tear into a new television and rip out the microphone that's in it and not use the smart functions on the television. The idea is to have basically something like the Alexa or the Siri built into a television so that you could speak commands and it would, act out those commands through the television. In the same way that you could get a piece of music to play on Alexa, you'd go to your smart TV and say, "Hey, play this episode of such and such," and it would go out and find it on Netflix, boom, and play it.
Oh, I could watch all of the Housewives. But so let's imagine that our smart TV, we've got 2 minutes to break. Our smart TV and our videos, they're listening to us, they're watching us, they're gathering all of this data about us. So now I'm going to take us way out of the realm of spirituality before we go to break, because I am reading that you can soon buy a sex robot with artificial intelligence.
Yeah. And I've heard about this, and I've discussed this with some folks about what's going on. I've seen people who are on that side of the entrepreneurial world of producing these kind of robots, and it is a very frightening thing because it goes into alignment with, all of the things that are taking us down this path, reducing the human population, which you could argue we're heading to 8 billion people. Maybe it needs to be reduced, but is this the way to accomplish it?
And
it's not moving us towards higher consciousness. It's engaging us at a primordial level in a lower base physical response, where there's just not the consciousness there that needs to be there.
There's
My feeling is if we live to be 300 or 400 years old, we'd be having kids in our 70s instead of having kids in our teens, in some cases, or 20s.
When we get back from the Go ahead.
Thank God. We have about 30 seconds to the break.
Okay.
And I just wanted to throw us into the gutter here because, with these robots, and we're going to go to a break, you can special order the way that they look and the dimensions of their body. And that's all I'm going to say as we go to break.
This is the Broadcast Team Alpha Show, hosted by Nori Love and Augie Nost. The one show that takes your doubts of the unknown and spins them into reality. Share your thoughts by calling our hotline number at 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230.
Call now.
Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio. More cutting-edge conversation and exploration of the quantum universe after this.
Steven.
Who said that?
Me, down here.
Ugh, what are you, a yellow booger?
I'm a banana slug, Steven.
What are you doing in my room?
I'm your sense of adventure. It's been a long time since we've had an adventure in the forest.
Mom took me to the forest last year.
I'm a slug, Steven. It took me a long time to get here.
You're right. I should get out.
Yeah, the forest is not that far away.
Hey, Mom!
Come to the forest where the more adventurous you lives. Check out discovertheforest.org for cool places nearby. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service and the Ad Council. Great.
The all-new KCOR Digital Radio Network.
Great.
Make a note of it.
It's great.
If ever a breed was affectionate to a fault, it's the Golden Retriever. They're people dogs, pure and simple. And the Golden Retriever Rescue of Southern Nevada needs your help. If you would like to volunteer, foster, adopt, or donate, go to the Golden Retriever Rescue of Southern Nevada's website at grrsn.org. That's grrsn.org. Or call 598-GOLD. That's 598-GOLD.
Looking for a radio show like no other?
We need something brand new.
Then tune into the KCOR Digital Radio Network, Tuesdays at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, and get ready for The Quantum Shift. A great shift of consciousness is sweeping across the Earth. Are you ready for the dimensional shift?
It is amazing, is it not?
The Quantum Shift. Quantum Shift. Quantum Shift. Hosted by Dr. Sam Muggsy and Kent Dunn. Be part of the fifth dimensional reality, where consciousness prevails and the universal law of one is the only true reality. The Quantum Shift. Quantum Shift. Quantum Shift. Live Tuesdays, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. Exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network.
Immerse yourself in an epic journey through time, where ancient mysteries unfold within a story of love and betrayal, as well as a battle of good versus evil in The Emissary Book 1, the reader's favorite Gold Medal Award winner for Visionary Fiction 2019. The action and adventure of The Emissary continues in The Emerald Tablet, Book 2. The 2019's Bronze Medal Award winner, The Emissary and The Emerald Tablet by Tamara Veach and Rennie DeFazio are both available now on Amazon.com. Let your reading adventure begin.
Going live.
Come explore the quantum possibilities. This is Broadcast Team Alpha.
Broadcast Team Alpha.
To be on the show live, call 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230. Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio. Share your thoughts of the show on Twitter at KCOR Radio, #KCOR. Or join the cutting edge conversation live in our chat room at KCORradio.com. Now back to Broadcast Team Alpha with your free thinking hosts, Nori Love and Augie Nast.
Ooh, and we are free thinking all over the globe tonight. And before we went to break, we're talking about AI with the brilliant and amazing Dan Brock. But before we went to break, we began to talk about the sex dolls with artificial intelligence that you can purchase. And we were leading into this with, Alexa and Siri and your smart devices, spying on you. But think of the information that gets gathered that way. Okay, now think of the information that gets gathered with the doll who speaks French to you, who you're having, intimate relations with. I mean, Dan, this is just like bending my brain.
It is. It's actually pretty frightening that we've reached the point where that sort of challenge to our understanding of the nature of our reality is facing us. Having sex with an artificial entity, something that in some way mimics a human being. It's just a furthering of this agenda that seems to be at play, where we are being progressively more isolated and separated from mainstream society. And if you want to control and manipulate, what you do is you separate and isolate. You don't allow community. I can imagine that there are communities of people that are talking about their experiences with their sex toys.
Exactly.
Their sex sex bots, you know.
They're sex bots, yeah. I mean, at least girls used to have parties, you know, to purchase sex toys. So that was still a sense of community. but
Yes,
you
and
know,
it was a
you're
little bit
right.
different.
It
But
was.
I don't see that really happening this time. I don't think there's like a Facebook,
No.
site. Maybe there is,
This isn't
for
this
this.
isn't a Tupperware party, right?
Right. It's not, no, and we don't even want to think about storing anything, in this regard. But the idea of trying these bots out, just for me, just seems like such a travesty of the understanding of what is possible. It's like
among people, you get many different types of personalities and mentalities, and there's a segment of society where they feel this is perfectly all right. I'm by myself anyway, and I'll just go ahead and do this. And they don't see anything wrong in it, because maybe us, which has a little more deeper thinking as a habit during the day, we look at that as something that is perverted or just even flat wrong.
Well,
I mean, can I just jump in?
Absolutely.
Let's tell the truth here. I mean, people have been having sex with things that resemble human beings in the form of toys for a long time. But, make no bones about, sorry, bad pun. We didn't think that they were real. We didn't interact with them. We didn't fall in love with them, right?
Yeah.
Because we knew exactly what they were.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's the difference.
There was a recent film, Blade Runner 2049, and there was a artificial human who had a computer consciousness that he interacted with, and he purchased these upgrades which allowed him to take that consciousness elsewhere with him. And at some point, there's a conflict between the two characters, one being another artificial human that was having a battle with him, and she was threatening to kill or destroy this projection of this artificial female that the male character was connected to. And as she destroys the transmitter that's transmitting the projection of this, she said, "Don't we make a great product?"
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
And I thought that is really, really telling of where we're going with this, and the understanding we need to have. I want to bring this back to an underlying issue, the sense of isolation, the sense of separateness and abandonment that many people feel. In my exploration of this, comes back to the birth experience. We have an issue in our society as a result of so many different agendas at play that are interfering with the birth process of humans. Women that are giving birth are experiencing interference in the birth process and not allowed to go through a natural physiological process where there's this interplay between the child and the mother to produce a bonding between the child and mother. These American Medical Association, or Center for Disease Control, has specified that the number of cesarean sections in this country needs to be reduced. We were approaching the point where 1/3 of all births in the United States were happening through cesarean sections, which interferes. It's literally like cuts right into that bonding between the mother and the child. And from a physiological standpoint, the consequence of this is diseases in society. And it's kind of at a level, I have to say that I feel this proliferation of sex bots represents at some level a disease of society. It represents a distorted view of the nature of our reality that comes from that separateness and abandonment that happens at such an early formative, impressionable period in human development. So until we return to natural childbirth, midwifery, if you want to include that, and allow this process to occur naturally, then we're going to wind up with more of these kinds of problems. And this is so deeply ingrained that I don't even know if it can be corrected.
It is. It's
in an adult sense, corrected in adults, because it does represent the startup conditions for a human being.
Right.
And that is so critical.
Well, it is. Go ahead, Augie.
Yeah, I also see here Jerry from Skype. He says that there was a picture of a person buying a ring for his Japan artificial intelligence sex doll. He is now partitioning the government, the state, to allow him to marry the sex doll. Just sick.
Yeah.
Which, of course, mean that the sex doll have to have citizenship in order for the government to have authority to marry them. And this is one of the things, if they get a lot of these petitions, they just might get to the point where they allow androids to have citizenship.
Yes, this is the frightening thing. You know, when we look at what's going on with artificial intelligence in terms of, you know, the manipulation of perception, it's happening at many levels. When you are moving to a situation where we're not producing protective measures on the part of governments instituting legislation to limit or to control at some level or put requirements on the interaction of artificial intelligence with humans, we're going to have this kind of thing. And there's a lack of understanding of that. You know, we can take this phenomena and we can go with it in many different directions in terms of, you know, its disruption of human society. So until we begin to sort of turn this around, we're into a real challenge. You know, back in 1956, they had what was called the Dartmouth Conference. I'll just mention this little, you know, bit of information that I came across, which is where the term artificial intelligence, AI, was coined by a gentleman named Professor John McCarthy, who was a math professor. And this conference brought together professors from all over the world to talk about artificial intelligence and artificial life in the sense of computers, how computers would interpret or could interpret information and mimic the capability of the machine to imitate intelligent human behavior. Now, one of the things that I discovered is that we have a situation where we should look at, well, what does this mean? I mentioned the name Dartmouth Conference, right? So this was at Dartmouth University. If some folks don't know about Dartmouth, it is sort of the under the surface Ivy League college in the United States. It goes back to quite a long time ago. In fact, one of the things that most people don't recognize is that in 1816 there was a legal case involving Dartmouth College, which was originally chartered by the King of England. Where it was going to be taken over by the state government. And there was a landmark U.S. Supreme Court decision in this case that recognized private corporations under a contract as having the same rights to property as an individual.
Yeah,
so
I know.
This was actually the Dartmouth University. Dartmouth College was actually the same entity that produced a decision on part of the U.S. government that allowed corporations to be identified as entities, with the same rights as human beings. So at the basis of this, we see a correlation between the issue in our society where something outside of ourselves is given the same rights as the individuals. This is perhaps, for me, I think, one of the biggest challenges we have in our society, which is the runaway power of corporations to control things, and the complete subjugation of our representation in government, which has come through some other legislation, Supreme Court decisions that came about in 2010, where it was decided or reached a decision that corporations were allowed to contribute to campaigns, political campaigns, unrestricted.
That Dartmouth decision also it spawned another opinion, a lawful opinion, stating that they had to make a distinction between a live person and a corporation. So they were going to spell the corporation in capital letters only. Otherwise, people had to be spelled with upper and lower case. And that is right in Title 4 of the U.S. Code. You can read about it, how they mislead to people. When you get a letter with all capital letters, it's not you they're talking to. They want to talk to your artificial person.
That's interesting. I think that's another layer to look at this. You know, the other thing about Dartmouth College, it is the home of a senior society called the Sphinx, which is was established in 1885 and is the oldest continuously operating all-male secret society in the country.
Really?
Dartmouth College, yes. So we have the makings of some level of influence over individuals and structures that exist to bring individuals together and direct them or program them and direct them in a certain direction in terms of their belief systems about how things are supposed to work.
How can we expect this to go forward from here? I can see that the robots is going to be taking over more and more of the jobs. And like I mentioned in the initiation here that, I went to Walmart and half the checkouts were automatic. Now, what's going to happen if most of the jobs are done with robots? What are they going to need us for?
Well, this is the question. We represent human beings, at least in the West, represent in the middle class and the lower class, and except for the very higher end of our society, represent a resource to be farmed financially a resource. So. I have been very concerned about this because the legislation that recognizes us as individuals and protects the individual seems to be way, way behind in the effects that artificial intelligence and artificial consciousness can have on human society. But the problem is who are you going to get to do a study, and then what is going to be the consequence of that study in terms of action that has to be taken to change things. If we do a study and say that, and this is purely hypothetical, 34% of the people that do self-checkout experience a negative experience with that, then somebody will say, well, what about the age distribution? Well, if everyone under, 25 has a positive experience with it, well, then what's the problem? We just wait for the older people to get out of the way, and then most people are having a positive experience. That may be what's being thought behind the scenes, but, in terms of legislation, we depend on, typically an older generation of humans with a certain amount of experience to help make decisions about these kinds of interactions. But I don't see it happening quickly enough before we become outstripped by artificial intelligence. So we have to take actions as individuals to define the role that intelligence plays in our life. One of the other things, I talked about the birth process, but, let's go a little deeper on this. Before we run out of time, I want to bring this subject up, and that is the non-human presence on this planet. Mm-hmm. There is, in my opinion, a non-human presence on this planet that there are sectors of the governments of the world that are intimately aware of. And at some level, the direction that things are going are seen as a mechanism to both track the non-human presence, to potentially identify and then deal with a non-human presence, or at least be aware of it, and then what's possible to address that non-human presence, and then what threat it represents to the society. To me, the back end of all of this monitoring and all of the data gathering and all of the analysis and everything that's going on, the genetic information collecting, the verbal information collecting, the processing of all of the phone calls that come through the data centers in this country. The CIA has its major data center, or one of its data centers in outside of Salt Lake City in Utah, and there have to be others. We just can't really imagine what the purpose of this is, other than what we're told. And what we're told is it's all for marketing. It's all for our safety and security from an international threat standpoint. But in reality, I think at the bottom, at the core of all this, is the non-human presence that we have to begin to address. Because guess what? That's related to our spiritual identity, which we talked about at the beginning of this discussion. Understanding who and what we are is going to relate to understanding our place in the universe. And our place in the universe is going to be relative to these non-humans that are interacting with us. The problem we face is the complexity of all this. It is, it's hard to just sit and, eat your meal quietly and not have this stuff be invading into your sense of privacy and security. It's almost impossible, which I think is one of the reasons why we don't have it, overtly in our society, because there's a fear of the collapse of society, the collapse of the control over society as a result of that.
And I hear that this is supposed to be all for our convenience and marketing, and of course my name is Cleopatra too. Right?
It is?
Yeah, there are so many components to this. Getting into that into a more detailed discussion on this issue would be a challenge. But just the core four things, which I think the last time I talked on here, I emphasize. One is update belief systems. Get your belief systems expanded as much as possible. Look into these different issues. You want to try to avoid the fear, the black hole of fear associated with so many of these issues, but you have to have an awareness of it. The other thing to do is to begin to work on your own issues. It's difficult to take on challenging information and to connect with other people if you have your own sort of inner emotional reactions to situations. So you have to work on that. And then once you're working on that, you can begin to build a community of people that you know and you connect with and you support and you integrate with that are going to have a similarity to yourself in terms of belief systems and perspectives on the nature of reality. That's one of the great things about a radio program like this. Broadcast Team Alpha obviously has, a tremendous value to the world in putting information out in a way that creates a community. And we have to be blessed by the presence of the internet and all of this fiber optic cable for the fact that we can communicate. We can communicate with people all over the world all of the time, if we so choose. And that is an amazing thing. So there's a double-edged sword here. We have the challenge of artificial intelligence in our society, but we have way more freedoms and capability to connect than we ever had and create community from those.
I know that these, about 2 to 3 years ago, there was a bill introduced in Congress that actually had in it they call it a rider. It was just stuck in there so that people wouldn't know really about it, that everybody on government assistance had to take and receive a microchip. Of course, it didn't pass, but this is the way they're going. They want this, not just for the people on assistance, but for everybody.
Yes.
And I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to go back to what Dan was saying about the things that we can work on for ourselves, because there's a whole lot more behind what you were saying there on a huge level, and I know that. And we are trying to build community, and like we're building a mastermind that's going to meet weekly, and you're welcome to email us at themastermindconnection@gmail.com for information on that. And then, Dan, speaking to what you were talking about, we have 4 minutes left. I have a group on Facebook. I know Facebook is evil, but it's called Body, Mind, Spirit, and Soul Fusion, because I know, a little bit of what's going on. And I absolutely know that everything that we want to happen, every way that we want to feel, the way that we want to interact in life and express ourselves as who we truly came to be, only happens when we are in alignment, body, mind, spirit, and soul. We can't leave one out. Do you agree?
Beautiful.
Yeah?
Beautiful. Yes.
Yay.
That is just so wonderful. I am so happy to hear that, because that's exactly the direction I think, all of us need to move into, to integrate who and what we are into a community. And the, I was mentioning this concept of things that we need to do. The last thing is when we successfully do that, we're able to move into being galactic beings, being universe beings, being humans in a vast field of life that exists across this universe. And how are we ever going to be accepted until we are able to raise our consciousness through those kinds of mechanisms? So bravo to you for doing that, because that is exactly the kind of thing I really am happy to hear about, and I hope continues.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the direction we need to go. This is what the Gestapo, so to speak, they are trying everything they can possibly think of to hold us back, so we never will be able to find out who we are.
Yeah, it produces distractions, manipulate our perception to produce distractions, to extract money and resources from us, and to disable us from acting on these understandings that we have. But we're at such a major turning point. The coming years are just so critical to human existence on this planet. Defining who and what we are, and being able to act in a way that is going to bring us to the universe in an acceptable way to other life forms is so much of our mission.
And I love that you said that, and I love what you said about becoming galactic beings. And we have 2 minutes till we close the show. I just want to thank you, Dan, for being with us, and thank you. The depth of the information that you brought to us is just, beyond what I ever imagined.
Thank you.
Phenomenal.
And if you're sitting wondering or feeling anxious, or like biting your nails a little bit about AI, let me just give you one word of the antidote, and it's love. Just go within your heart, dwell in love, and you're going to be okay. You guys agree?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you. We're going to close now. Thanks so much.
Thank you guys so much. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much, Nori and Augie, for this opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
I'm tremendously grateful. And thanks to KCOR Radio, and of course, you guys, it's Broadcast Team Alpha.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Good
Thank you.
You've been listening to Broadcast Team Alpha.
Broadcast Team Alpha.
Hosted by Nori Love and Augie Nost. Every Tuesday night at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. The balance of power is shifting to a new paradigm. Will you be ready? For more information on Broadcast Team Alpha, as well as the hosts Nori Love and Augie Nost, please visit their website at broadcastteamalpha.com. Until next week, remember to keep those minds open while always exploring the endless quantum possibilities.
Broadcast Team Alpha. Over and out.
This is KCOR Las Vegas, home of the Digital Radio Network, broadcasting from a shack just south of Area 51. Wait, that doesn't exist.